another couple. The people are doubled up, tripled up in apartments across the city, and this is a part of the invisible homelessness situation that we see in Nashville. And it causes terrible problems that we see throughout the city. The mayor interested in trying to do something about youth violence. Well, this is a huge part of the youth violence problem as well. If people don't have stable places to live, if they're in camps and they're threatened with eviction, wherever they're threatened with eviction, they ultimately, it increases the tensions and the problems within the area. There have been a series of apartments that have been bought out and turned into higher priced housing. Edmondson Manor, for example, and the James Robertson, which still is empty. And all of these people have been forced into other places, often either outside of the county or into literal homelessness.
Now, Mr. Rodriguez, you talk about the statistical information in reference to the homeless population. Give us some information in reference to that and how what we're doing here in Nashville differs from some of the issues, some of the other areas that you might be familiar with.
Yeah, so my focus in my research is national, although in the last year or so I've tried to focus more on Nashville specifically. What's really striking to me is how normalized mass homelessness has become. So in leading up to the 1980s, homelessness was more or less cyclical. It would be tied a lot more to the labor market. When there was a lot of unemployment, there would be a lot more homelessness. When unemployment would go down, homelessness would tend to go down too. But starting in the late 70s, early 1980s, we started to see this sustained mass homelessness. And the bottom floor estimates today are about 500,000 nationally, although it's that's not counting a lot of people, so it's probably over 1 million at least. And so so one question I have is why is it we've gotten used to it. We've adjusted to homelessness having a place in our society at this level, and so we need to do something to introduce it. We need to realize a different ethic, really. But so one there are several approaches being adopted by Nashville to reduce homelessness. I mean, there's more of the preventive side, building affordable housing. That's what a lot of advocates here in Nashville are wanting to do. Once people become homeless, one debate nationally has been how do you what's the best way to get people back into housing? Yeah.
And that's a real problem, you think, that, and you find that Nashville is no different in a real sense from a large number of urban areas, not only large areas, but I would imagine that if you go in Smyrna, you'll find the same kind of issue. Perhaps they might be more intense in Smyrna than they might be in Nashville, simply because Smyrna probably does not have the resources, really does not have the resources to deal with that as part of the population. And so what we want to do, and we're coming to the end of this second segment, what we want to do, we want to start with Howard here, and to talk about this issue of gentrification, because I think that is a real issue. And I think we see all of these great buildings going up in Nashville. We're becoming urban, but in a real sense, a large number of folks are suffering because of it. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take this first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Three minutes. Everything that you know that might be helpful in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here today, dealing with this issue of gentrification. You see, this is what we want. That's how we want to do it. And so all of you have the information in reference to. The only thing I know is that everywhere I go, I think that I'm in New England or somewhere, and I see all of these houses and some of the places that were dilapidated and whatever. You go by now and they've been rebuilt and they've got a nice front to it, and there are different structures and something's going on there, but the same people that once lived there are no longer there. And what happened? And so that's what, that's what I see.
That's what it is.
That's
exactly what it is.
That's why I was attracted to this as an issue here. So you take about 3 minutes, you take about 3 minutes, you take about 3 minutes and deal with anything that you'd like to deal with this issue of what? Gentrification. Okay? This is the last segment of 3 times 5 is 15 segments we had today. Started at 10:30 this morning. I'm trying to get out of here before 2:30. And everything's gone quite well. What time is it now? 1:40? Yeah, we're way ahead of schedule. You can do a 30-minute show in an hour. 45 minutes, really.
30 seconds out.
You got slave labor. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. The topic is homeless displacement and gentrification in Music City. And we have with us Mr. Allen, Mr. Rodriguez, and Mr. Lester. And so we have all 3 of you with us during the final 10 minutes that we have here. Let's start off, Mr. Allen, by talking about this issue of gentrification and the impact that it has on Nashville itself, and then you'll have 3 minutes and you'll have 3 minutes.
Well, being a Nashvilleian, I watched Nashville change. All this land has been entrusted, so they have no place to go now but to the areas of poverty. And that's through North Nashville and into East Nashville. And about 4 weeks ago on NPR, they said that they're doing gentrification in North Nashville, East Nashville, West Nashville, and South Nashville all at the same time. No other city is doing that, even though there's gentrification going on in other cities. If you go into Salem Town, which is connected to Germantown, it looks the same now. And these people, if they didn't want to sell, they have a law called eminent domain, so they will take it. North Nashville, they are building all kind of condominiums up and down Jefferson Street. They were getting ready to try to put a police station there, and they're taking it one step at a time. When the Suffordale new baseball stadium, that kicked off the whole ball game right there, because all you have to do is cross over Jefferson and you go into Germantown. And we see it, and it's like the preachers aren't preaching about it or talking about it, and the people act like they don't understand what's going on. And it's just really not a proper way of really calling this a it city, because it's not an it city. Because everybody does not have a place to live, to call sanctuary, call a home.
And so what we're saying, Mr. Rodriguez, in a real sense, that while we might talk about gentrification, this really has an impact upon the lives of folks who are in those areas. And I would imagine one of the solutions might be is to provide some kind of housing for the folks who are displaced. Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah, well, we need to find some way to prevent the destruction of affordable housing. And one reason is because it affects African American communities in particular very hard, and that's one reason why after 1980. African Americans have been disproportionately homeless. Before 1980, that wasn't really the case. So I think gentrification has something to do with that.
So that no matter how old the structure might be, when you remove the structure, the house itself, no matter what the conditions might have been in that house, the people still had a place to go. And when you remove the house, the people no longer have a place to go, and they are literally homeless. I guess this is what we talk about, the destruction of the homeless population. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, it used to be a lot more common to have single room occupancy homes, different, like really lower quality homes. While not ideal, they were still something. But as urban renewal has really taken flight, that kind of housing has been destroyed in a lot of cities.
Well, Mr. Lester, in view of the fact that everywhere you look, you see some kind of skyscraper going up in Nashville, which is to say that we have the ingenuity to build as many of these things as we possibly can and as fast as we possibly can. Cannot there be some kind of agreement that we can develop at least one or two of these large structures, homeless kind of structures that will allow for some of the individuals who are made absolutely homeless to have a place to lay their heads at night?
Well, you point to the building of these buildings. A large part of this is tax finance. They give tax breaks to large developers, over $300 million during the period of Carl Dean, to build these places that, the theory, I suppose, is that the prosperity will trickle down. Unfortunately, it really has not trickled down. Poverty has increased dramatically in Nashville. It's, as I said, 1 in 5 now, including 35,000 children. And yes, there should be money available to build affordable housing. Now, we're not so interested in seeing it concentrate. I work with NOAA's Affordable Housing Task Force as well as a voice. And we don't really want to see it concentrated in large projects, but units spread throughout the city so as that to break up the concentrated poverty. But also money can be provided to rehabilitate housing that is falling apart or that people are in danger of losing. The problem is the mayor has conceived of it as a relatively small problem. She's pledged $10 million this year and potentially more without a permanent source of funding. That's the amount we gave to the zoo in the past couple of years. The zoo has a capital campaign of $160 million, largely for an African savanna exhibit. We feel like the city should have a larger capital campaign for people who are either homeless or who are in danger of falling into homelessness. And so it's unimaginable to me, at least, that the city can't find a dedicated source of funding for the Barnes Affordable Housing Trust Fund to actually preserve and create new affordable housing. We believe 20,000 units are what's needed now. There are 14,000 people waiting for vouchers. And these are families, people with children, people that are citizens, taxpayers who've lived here for a long time that desperately need some assistance.
Mr. Rodriguez, in view of the fact that you have some knowledge in terms of what's going on nationally in reference to the homeless population, what city do you believe, or what state do you believe is doing the best in terms of trying to deal with the problems that we're talking about here today? I mean, what state or city do you know that we can say that this is perhaps the best that they can do in reference to the homeless population dealing with this issue?
Yeah, well, I would say New York City has had the most experience. There are probably other cities that maybe have been a little more experimental and maybe have more successful policies. I know Hennepin County, Minnesota, for example, has been talked about a lot. But New York City has been at this for a long time. So that's typically where researchers and policymakers tend to go if they want ideas for policy.
Well, now, Mr. Lester, do you think that the kind of money that we spend on other issues outside of the homeless population, do you think that some of that money might be directed toward dealing with smaller units, not necessarily congregating everybody in one building, but dealing with smaller units over a widespread area?
Yes, I think that would be definitely the preferred solution. The mayor's targeted some really good things towards providing more money for schools and the like, but I don't think she recognizes the severity of the problem and of the need for affordable and workforce housing. Over half the population of Nashville, the workers of Nashville, make less than $29,000 a year. And over half the renters are cost burdened. They can't really afford the housing that they're living in, which puts them in danger all the time of becoming, ending up on the street. That's exactly right.
And so in a real sense, we've got a real issue here, but it's an issue that perhaps it can be solved by money. Money might not solve everything, but do you think that we can solve some of these issues by more money?
I think so. That's one thing that it's going to take is money to change the policy, and then we forget about the large population that is incarcerated that have mental illness, and they don't need to be locked up, but one day they're going to be free, and they're not going to have a home. And the question that you asked Mr. Rodriguez earlier, if you look at Sacramento and Pasadena and Buffalo, they're doing a great job as far as eradicating homelessness right now.
And so you would suggest those might be some issues, some areas that we might look in terms of policymakers and we're running out of time here, but let me thank the three of you for bringing that excellent information, because I think it gives us all, at least it gives me a better understanding of what's going on, because wherever I go, over in North Nashville, East Nashville, and et cetera, I see all of these New England style homes that are there, and I know that I understand all of these things are happening. And so let me thank you, and let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you, and